A friend of mine was at the house with her husband, and I mean, I've known them for years. Their kids are my god kids. And I went over to give George a hug, and he goes, "Have you always been this short?" I'm like, "Yeah, babe. I've been 5'2" since 5th grade."
That's
So,
funny.
yeah.
See, and I'm like, I surprise people sometimes. Like, I remember Dennis, when we first started dating, like, I'd stand up and I'm like almost looking him in the eye, and he would look surprised every time.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if they're used to dating shorter women.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
And I've always dated tall guys. Well, except for Zach's dad.
Right.
He was 5'4".
Yeah.
So we were right about the same. We were little hobbit people.
I called you a hobbit the other day at game
Did you?
night, actually. Because we were talking about BMI, right?
Right.
And how it was designed in the 1830s.
Right.
And it's like not set up for
Modern body
Different-
structures.
different genetic,
Right.
you know,
Things have changed. I mean, you look at all these
stuff.
tiny clothes in museums and stuff. And
right?
it's like, yeah, those people were always very small.
Yeah. So,
But I read something about that, though. That those were clothes that were usually outgrown and put away. So they weren't worn till they worn out, which
That
is
makes
now why
sense.
they end up in museums.
Yeah.
Because there's a woman on YouTube that does plus size vintage clothing. And she was talking about there's always been plus size.
Yeah.
There's always been a plus size. Now, back in the day, a plus size might have been a 12
right.
or a 15.
Well, and then the sizes have changed.
Yeah.
And hey, we're actually recording.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize that, but that's okay.
Okay, we will go on this topic. Maybe we should do that more often.
We probably should, because like literally I had it set up so that I could reach out and start the recording.
Right.
And I forgot that sometimes it will
just automatically
start recording.
Okay.
So, but no, the BMI thing was created in the 1830s, and it only took into account like one ethnic group.
Right. Right.
And, so I was talking about, okay, well, I mean, you kind of have like the tall Nordic elf people, and then you have the short Irish hobbit people like
me.
Laura, and where I'm like, big Brunhilde Viking,
But, that's also the German genetics.
Yeah.
As well.
Right.
As a massage therapist, I touch tons of body types.
Right.
And I can almost always tell by body structure and flexibility what their genetics are. Because what I find is my Germans tend to be very sturdy and not quite so limber. Whereas if you've got somebody that's plump and sturdy like me, but super bendy,
right,
they tend to be of a Celtic extraction.
Okay.
Of they're Scotch or they're Irish or they're Welsh or something along those lines. And I'm fascinated by the historic body changes and the fact that, like you said, only one demographic was really taken into consideration. They were looking at white women. They weren't looking at women of color who have curves.
Right.
They weren't looking at white women like me who are built like women of color. So
they weren't looking at Asians. They weren't looking at all kinds of different things.
Exactly.
And some of us were designed to withstand harsh winters.
Absolutely. We're designed to stick it out through the hard stuff and build that barn and go out there and walk behind the mule. All of that. So, if the society collapses, well, we're the women you want to find.
Right. Exactly. We're the ones that are going to be able to survive those winters. And
not only that, but we have the extra meat on us that, if we need to pull from our fat sources, we can do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, of course, we're also the people you want to find anyway, because we have some knowledge in health in natural ways and stuff like that. So zombie apocalypse happens,
come find us. Yeah. I actually had a friend of mine who had about 80 acres out in the country, and about 15 years ago, when the prepper thing started to get really big, he was building a bunker and he was preparing, and he came to me and he goes, I have only allowed for family and your family. Because I want
Yeah, I
you to
remember
come
you
with
told me
me.
that.
You know how to forage.
Right.
You know how to sew. You
Yeah.
know how medicinal alternatives,
Right.
all that sort of stuff. So, and it's really cool because I'm teaching my granddaughter to forage.
I love that.
Which is hilarious because she'll go out in the yard and she'll pick something up and pop it in her mouth and her dad freaks out. Like, what did you just put in your mouth? It's okay. It's out of Grammy's yard.
It's a freaking wild onion.
I can eat it out of Grammy's yard. Grammy told me not to eat it out of anybody else's yard. I said, because I know I don't have pesticides on my yard. I can't guarantee that there aren't going to be on somebody else's.
Oh, that is too funny. See, I've always thought that. I'm like, I don't know how much help I would be on something like that.
It's not hard to learn.
No, it's not. I mean, I have some knowledge, but also, like, can I apply it when
it actually happens?
When something happens? I don't know.
Right. Well, and just like...
But I tend to don't give myself
enough
credit. To not give myself enough credit on what I actually know. So.
Right. Well, and the only reason we know all those things was from trial and error anyway.
Right.
So if we ended up in a situation like that,
sure.
I'm sorry, you're hungry enough, you're going to look at something and go, I wonder if that's edible.
I'm going to hide my dog.
It didn't kill me. No, it didn't kill me.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how you look. But I think that...
Well, the whole idea of BMI and body image is like, people get so hung up on BMI as if it is like absolute gospel.
Right.
And even a lot of medical doctors now are kind of going, that's...
Maybe not so much.
Not the only measure. It's not a good measure of health.
Right.
I
have always used... Because I am very densely built.
Yeah.
And they would always say, you're 5'2", you should be 115 pounds. Well, I distinctly remember my 21st birthday. I had a 2-year-old at that time. And I remember stepping on the scale that morning and being horrified that I weighed 121 pounds because I was so overweight. I look at those pictures now, and I look way too thin.
Yeah.
I was underweight for my body structure.
Right.
But I was still trying to adhere to that. If you're this height, you should be this weight. And then once I started having my kids, I realized my kids are filled with concrete too. Yeah. I mean, you pick my toddler up and it's like, oh my God, are you 7? But,
See, and I kind of thought about it differently. I knew I was built like my dad, right? Like my dad, very broad-shouldered, very dense muscle that you can't really always see.
Right.
But it's there. And I knew that I was stronger than most of the guys in my youth group because I could outlift them at the gym.
Yeah.
But, one of them was a place kicker on his high school football team, and he was a really little short thing, and I was so impressed with myself that I could outlift him.
Right. I used to arm wrestle the boys in middle school.
And I'd win. When I finished massage school, and I started working on different body types, and I got my brother on my table, I got my dad on my table, and I'm like, oh, I really am built.
This is genetics.
This is like...
Yeah.
Really dense. They are exhausting to work on. Am I exhausting to work on when you work on?
No, I don't. You are a lot of work, but it's not necessarily exhausting.
Okay.
Because it's not, I mean, there's a lot of work that you need to be done just simply because you use your body a lot. You're working out. You hold a lot of emotion as well because of the work that you do.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that kind of work.
Okay.
But I find working on family is more exhausting.
That's fair. I wasn't thinking about that
I find
aspect,
working on people that I'm related to.
Yeah, that is
much more exhausting. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's because of the headspace I'm in or if it's more to do with, I'm working that out. And as I'm working that out, it starts hurting on me too. It's like, I know where this hurts. I know what that, what
Yeah.
that's about. But I find it more draining,
I
and
could see that.
I don't know if it. I think it probably has more to do with the emotional connection
That might be.
with somebody.
Well,
that
that
doesn't
makes
mean that I
sense.
don't emotionally connect with my other clients.
No, but it's different.
It's a different, totally different dynamic.
In the energy exchange and all of that. So, like, because back on the body image and stuff like that, the number of women, my God, we are so hard on ourselves. Yeah. Because the number of women that I talk to, the young women, who are like, oh, well, I'm not as thin, and I put on weight, and they put on weight in all the right places, right?
Right.
But
because they're tied to that number on the scale.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you don't have a teenager's body anymore. You have a woman's body. Right. And they've been talking about, like, this second puberty. Well, okay. So people are talking about perimenopause as a second puberty, but there's actually another one in the early 20s.
Yes. Yeah.
And we think that we're supposed to stay the same all the way through our lifespan. I have one pair of jeans somewhere. It's probably in the garage in the storage that I wore in high school. Now, I am 5'8". I am built more like Tatiana Ali than Heidi Klum.
Right.
Or Venus Williams. You know?
Yeah.
Venus and Serena Williams.
Yeah.
So I'm muscular. I have broad shoulders. By the time I was in 3rd grade, I was wearing women's large shirts because my shoulders are so broad. Like, I'm a fucking linebacker. Right. So, this pair of jeans that I have from high school are size 8 jeans from the mid-90s. Okay. Right. And I looked at it, and I measured that waist, and I measured my thigh now.
Oh, I know.
It is the same. I'm like, one thigh would fit that waistband. Yeah. Like, it's so unrealistic but to hold on to that standard.
But at that time in your life, you were criticizing yourself for being that heavy.
I was, because
all women do that.
I was kind of like your BMI story. I was 5'8", and a size 8... but I weighed 150 pounds.
Right. You shouldn't be a size 8 and weigh 150
I shouldn't have weighed 150 pounds according to that chart.
Right.
And, that was like barely acceptable on the top end. Like that was the top end of what was acceptable for me. But that was also like someone who was out lifting weights, riding horses, playing sports. Right. I could throw the 50-pound saddle without a problem.
Right. And they didn't take that into consideration. When they were making those parameters for what should be acceptable for a woman's weight and size.
Right, exactly.
And there are many, 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 many women that I've talked to that are like, man, I wish I was the size I was when I was complaining about the size I was.
Yes! I told my brother, was it my brother? I don't know. I told some man in my life, sometime in the last couple of months, I'm like, I'd love to get down to my original weight, but like 8 pounds 2 ounces is kind of unrealistic.
It's kind of unrealistic, exactly.
And it just was supposed to point out how silly we are, because at different stages of your life, you're gonna look different. We have to. You don't have to. We should embrace, and I'm using that word, but you should embrace change, because you're gonna change no matter what,
and celebrate that change,
because
a lot of those changes happen because other really good things happen.
That is true.
You have a child. That's amazing. A lot of us, when we get in partnership, we get fat and happy.
That's right.
We're happy. And no man has ever said to me, you're too fat, put your clothes on, get out of my bed. I'm more concerned about it. But that's another topic that I'd like to touch base on, is how we turn ourselves off sexually when we can feel our own roles, know? Because that's a big one for me. But going back to body image, body type, body shape, all of that sort of thing, we have stages in our lives. Yeah. And when we go from being a little girl to going into puberty, all of a sudden we have all of this fat in places we did not have fat before. And it's not being celebrated. It's not being, at least when I was a kid, it wasn't celebrated. I was always in husky, which was
Right.
there would be a size 6X, but then there'd be a 6X husky, which was a thicker waist, a thicker
Right.
bottom, a wider bottom cut in the pants and whatever. And I hated it. I hated that term. It just upset me and made me just feel gross about myself. There wasn't anything wrong with my body shape.
Right.
And I have had conversations, and I've said this to my girls. And when it happened, they laughed and they were like, Mom, you're right. Each one of my daughters, right before they hit puberty, right around 10, 11 years old, they got really round. And they got pudgy. They went through this thick phase. And they would get really upset about it. I said, oh, honey, don't worry.
Yeah.
In a little while, God's going to reach down. He's going to squish you in the middle. And it's going to become boobs and hips.
Yep.
And when it did, they were like, Mom, you're right. It became boobs and hips. So I use that analogy a lot when I'm dealing with a lot of these preteen girls that are really hung up on, oh my God, I'm so fat. I don't look like this person, or I don't look like that person. We start so early in our lives comparing our bodies to other people's bodies.
Yeah.
Comparing our bodies to a media standard of our bodies. I embarrassed my girls so badly one time. They had to have been 8, 10, that age range. And we're standing in line, and this tells you how long ago it was, because Kate Moss was on the cover of a magazine.
Yeah.
And those of you that don't know Kate Moss, go Google it. Kate Moss was on the cover of a magazine, and we had actually been talking about health and wellness in our Girl Scout troop.
Okay.
I snatched that magazine off the rack, and I'm shaking it at the girls, and I'm like, this is not normal. Do you see how her wrist and her elbow are the same size? Do you see that her thigh and her knee are the same size? If you want to see what a standard of beauty is for you to achieve, you look at your mom, you look at your grandma, you look at your aunties, all of that. And the women in the line behind me are just laughing and crap. My girls are like, Mom, shut up. Mom, oh my God.
Well, see, partly, now I couldn't look at my mom for that reason. Because, so my mom had these really tiny little delicate wrists.
My mother has very tiny hands.
And there's not a lot of fat on that.
No, it's bone.
That is bone. And so, like, my mom would buy these really beautiful bracelet watches.
Delicate stuff.
And she'd buy me one, but it wouldn't fit. I still have a hard time finding watches that fit.
Right.
But she would take links out of hers to put into mine.
Right. And hers still fit.
And hers still fit. She could make it smaller and it would still fit. But she was still a plus size woman, but she had these little tiny, little delicate, and that was used to say that I was too
big.
Too big. And, I was, again, a size 8 jeans when I was in high school was like...
On a 5'8" frame
on a 5'8"
is not
frame, that's
unreasonable.
I had an athletic build, but, I was really into theater and acting, and I wanted to make a career out of this, right?
Right.
But I was told that I was going to have to be a plus size model.
I got that too. I was 5'2", weighed 108. But I had big boobs, and I had a round bottom. I had a J-Lo bottom before J-Lo made it popular. And there was a local, I think it was like, I can't remember the modeling company. It wasn't Barbizon, but it was one of those local modeling places. And I called them because everybody's like, you're so pretty, you should be a model, blah, 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 blah. Well, because I was 5'2" and 108 pounds, I would have had to have been one of their plus size models.
Right.
And at that point, at that stage in my life, that crushed me.
Right. Because
that
we had
reinforced
those messages.
It reinforced the message. And now I'm like, make me a plus size model, baby. I rock that.
I've been a plus size model.
So right, I know. You're awesome. She's even modeled lingerie.
I am. But see, it took me so long to get to that point. Now, also, I was in a situation in my life earlier where I had continued to receive those messages over many, many, many years.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was probably 40 that I just said, you know what? Screw this.
Right.
I am not the Loch Ness monster that
You're
this person
presenting as
is
right.
making me out to be.
Right.
And I embraced it. I'd already done some modeling elsewhere for a company that I got to go to Fashion Week in New York and model, but I was plus size.
I didn't know that.
You didn't? Oh, you
I didn't know that.
I
That's
did.
cool.
I mean, it
awesome.
sounds way greater than it actually was because it wasn't runway modeling, but it was still during Fashion Week
I'm
in
sorry.
New York. Okay?
Fashion Week in New York, that counts.
But
that's an achievement.
I had to really work on me to embrace me
Right.
as I was so that I could do. And when I did the lingerie modeling, it was honestly almost a test.
Mm-hmm.
To
I remember
myself
when
to
you were
see if I could actually do it
when that came about.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you about it. Oh, I really want to do it, but I don't know if I can do it. But I really want to do it. But you know, there was a lot of back and forth because you were still struggling with where you wanted to be with your body.
Right.
And where you still kind of were with your body because of those messages.
Right.
Those programmings, those tapes playing in your head.
Yeah.
That are your mother's voice, your teenage classmates' voices. You know, girls are so ugly to other girls.
Oh, man.
Especially when it comes to your build. And we go through these phases, like I was getting ready to say earlier, where you go from being a little girl to being a preteen. And then you go from being a preteen to being a full-on developed teenager. But then you don't stay there. And then you go on to being, you know, your early 20s, your 30s.
And it changes again.
It changes again.
You have a baby, it changes
again. And then once you think you're finally stabilized, here comes perimenopause. And you start thickening in places that you've never been thick before. I mean, my girls and I laugh about our lack of thigh gap. Even at 108 pounds, my thighs touched. My thighs have never been strangers.
Well, but
they are almost conjoined twins.
Thigh gap is,
and it's something that young women achieve. They think that that's an achievement,
right?
To get that.
Have you seen like people talking about the hip dips? So go look it up. But you know, it's not something that you can actually really change about yourself. It is something that is just part of you.
A structure, is it?
So hip dip is a certain outline of the hip
of
area.
The hips. Okay.
And you know, they're like, well, we don't want hip dips. We don't want.
Oh, so instead of your hips going smooth like this, they do this little bubble thing. Oh, I call those my saddlebags.
Right?
Yeah.
But it is so incredibly normal, and some people cannot change that.
Absolutely.
And people are so worried about changing things about themselves. Yeah. And I'll be really honest. There are things that I have wanted to change about myself for years. And this leads me into kind of an exercise for people to do at home. But I am a firm believer that for every perceived negative we have, there is something positive about that.
Exactly.
Now, I have got gigantic feet. It used to be that I had to go to shoe stores that catered to drag in order to find shoes to fit my feet.
Okay.
I am a size 11 feet. Now, women's cowboy boots you don't often find in size 11. Like there was, it's kind of crazy. You wouldn't think that now, but
back then
in high school when I was, you know, back in the 90s, it was a whole problem. So, but I look at that and I go, you know what? I'm already not a graceful woman.
Right.
If they were any smaller, I would probably be even less
tipping
graceful.
over all the time.
Right.
Right.
I have a mole on the end of my nose that I have hated since junior high because when it gets really cold out, you can see it. It turns bright pink. I look like Rudolph.
Oh, you know, I've known you for over 20 years and I have never noticed the mole on your nose. And I have been up close and personal in your space. I've never noticed the mole on your nose. But it's fascinating to me the things that we fixate on that no one else notices.
Right. But there came a point where I'm like, you know what? It is exactly like one that a family member has. And there will come a day that I will be grateful for the reminder.
Right. Because you will miss that person, and it's somebody that you care about. And,
yeah. During the pandemic, I had a lot of clients that were like really upset because they were gaining weight and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, your body is actually doing what it needs to do.
As mine
Your
sits
body
here
is
grumbling.
right now.
Sorry.
But your body's doing what it is designed to do during
Right.
times of uncertainty. It's going to
Absolutely.
hold on to extra weight, you know?
Absolutely.
And so we've talked about that. So for every perceived negative, there is a positive somewhere. Now,
Not only that, but fortunate. The
Yeah.
fortunate situation that you are in, that you have enough
Right.
food
to be able
that you
to.
are gaining weight.
Right.
You know, it.
That
and
wasn't
that-
the thing for everybody.
That's going to segue into the next piece that we do, which is about manifestation and
Yeah.
and changing your thoughts.
We
about
have
things.
alluded to several things that we're going to lead into.
Right.
in
Right.
other
Eventually, we'll follow
things.
through on all of it.
But I have had one person turn this perceived negative into a positive thing in a very blue direction.
Oh.
And you'll have to let me know if you want me to cut this out or
Oh,
not.
okay,
This is a little
okay.
adult.
Okay. Here comes the PG-13 warning.
Now, bear in mind, I am a sex therapist. I focus on a very particular community in that field. And so some of the people I talk to go way off into the blue sometimes. So, but this person said to me, so you're telling me that if I'm uncomfortable with the size of my equipment,
Right.
that I really should look at it as I can either have a big dick or anal sex, but not both.
Oh. Okay.
And I'm like, well,
All
that's
right.
one way to look
One
at
way
it.
to look at it.
Um,
Well, along those lines,
yeah.
I noticed personally for me,
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy sex more when I have extra padding
Yes.
on my pubic bone.
Yeah.
I was able to achieve orgasm better.
Mm-hmm.
There was just something about the entire experience that was much more satisfying for me.
Yeah.
Having that little bit of extra of padding there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always something I remember when I saw my grandmother naked, I saw my mom naked, and they had this little fat pooter pouch going. And I was like, I don't want that.
Right.
Oh my God, I don't want that.
Right.
And now I have that. And I'm like, okay, well, that's just part of aging.
Yeah.
And I actually was able to correlate that with more pleasure for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't, it stopped being a negative
Right.
for me. I think that happens a lot with women's bodies when we can take something about ourselves that we really don't care for
Mm-hmm.
and try and flip to a positive.
Yeah.
My big one that I'm currently struggling with, I've struggled with various things. I've not really ever been vain about my body, but I always used to have a teeny tiny waist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a teeny tiny waist anymore. I'm looking like the grandmother that I am.
Mm-hmm.
I love that part.
Yeah.
I love that part. My granddaughter, when she was 7 years old, she crawled up into my lap and she snuggled in and she goes, I love sitting on your lap, Grammy.
Aww.
I said, oh, baby, I love you sitting on my lap, too. She goes, because you're so fat. And I pushed her little butt off onto the floor. But we laughed about it.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more valuable for me to appreciate this phase in my life
Yes.
as grandmother. I adore my grandchildren. They are my favorite people in the world. I call them my favorite collection. I have 11 of them. Working on an even dozen. Come on, kids. But that's helped me shift that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also helped me shift around this.
Yeah.
You know, this I used to have a very crisp, chiseled jawline. I used to have my dad's jawline. You can kind of see the dimple. I used to have, a very square jaw, very cleft chin, and I saw that as part of my beauty.
Mm-hmm.
But it's now softened.
Yeah.
And it's sagging. And yes, retinol cream helps that. And
Right.
if I do my beauty regimen, it does lift and tone and tighten, but I ain't got time for that. I'm
Right.
busy doing stuff I want to do
Right.
versus the stuff I gotta do to look a certain way.
Absolutely.
And again, all of those pieces, if I look at it and go, you know what? I have a good patina going here, you know?
Yeah.
I look and I'm like, you know what? I look like the grandmother that I'm
Yeah.
very much enjoying being.
Absolutely.
And honestly, I look pretty damn good for most women my age.
you look good for most women.
I look good for
Let's
most
leave
women.
off
Let's
the
leave it
age
for my
part.
age. Yeah, we do that to ourselves a lot too.
Yeah.
But I think because we get stuck in this comparison game.
Absolutely.
I mean, I look at other women. There are other women on YouTube that I know are my age.
Uh-huh.
And there are other women on YouTube that I know are older than me.
Yeah.
And I look at them and go, damn, I don't look that good. I don't feel like I project that same type of youthfulness.
Oh.
And it gets me down sometimes. But then I remember to be me.
Yeah.
And there's only one me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty amazing. And
Right.
it has taken me until I'm in my 50s to actually say, I love who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I love where my mind is. I mostly love where my body is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as fixated on my looks as much as I used to be. Excuse me. It might be different if I were still on the market.
Mm-hmm.
If I still felt like I had to compete for resources, you know, there's a lot of that we do. But being comfortable in your own skin is an amazing gift
Yes.
to give yourself.
Yes.
And if you struggle with doing that, start an exercise that I had to start doing, and it really sucks.
I know where you're going.
Stand naked in front of your mirror.
And if you hadn't mentioned this, I was gonna, because it's hard.
Stand naked in front of a full-length mirror. And the things that you look at that you instantly hate. The things, it might be the cellulite on your thighs. It might be your fupa. It might be your boobs that used to rest in your chest but now sit a little bit above your belly button. Whatever that part of your body or parts of your body it is, thank them. Love them. Give them appreciation. You will cry.
Yeah.
You will cry when you do this because it is so, excuse me, it is so against the grain.
Mm-hmm.
It's so against what we have done to ourselves for so long.
Yeah.
Where we stand in front of that mirror and we have a checklist of that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. You want to take the marker at the plastic surgeons and start drawing on yourself. Okay, I want this lifted, I want that lifted. Okay, well in my case, I can stand in front of the mirror and those boobs fed 5 children.
Yep.
Those thighs have supported me and carried me. And they're going to keep me from breaking a hip when I'm 70.
Right.
You know? So,
see, and one of my things I used to struggle with my stretch marks.
Mhm.
I got stretch marks so fast. The minute I found out I was pregnant, I was covered in them.
mm-hmm,
You know?
mm-hmm,
And I got a tattoo a couple of years ago
right?
on my hip, and it's covered in stretch marks.
Right.
And I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm good now. I don't care anymore.
Right.
But while he was doing the tattoo, like, it hurts a little bit when they go over
When
a
they go over a
mark.
stretch mark because the
with the
skin's
tattoo
thinner.
needle.
Yeah.
But I was talking about that later, and I think that Dennis was I think he thought I was uncomfortable with my stretch marks.
Right.
Because his response was, have I ever said anything bad about, anything negative about it?
Right.
I'm like, well, no, but I haven't either.
Right.
You know?
Because you don't now.
But I have those stretch marks. They're like the story of my life.
Mm-hmm. They are your tiger stripes. They're your warrior marks. They're,
exactly.
you know, it's called labor for a reason.
Right.
It's called labor for a reason. It's hard work. And that's a badge of honor. In fact, I knew a Hispanic gentleman who came up to me at one point. I was vacationing in like Playa del Carmen or something like that. And I was wearing a bikini because I am, hate me if you want, one of the very few women who's had multiple children who does not have stretch marks on her belly. Mine are on my boobs, mine are on my butt, mine are on my thighs, but I don't have a single stretch mark on my belly.
That's awesome.
And I was walking on the beach and this probably 60-year-old man came up to me. And he goes, "You are absolutely gorgeous." And I made some comment about, "Oh, I should have worn my skirt or whatever." And he goes, "No, that makes you a woman.
Right.
You are a woman." And the fact that it came from a man from a different culture, that just really started waking me up to body image stereotypes within cultures.
Oh, yeah.
Within
That's
cultures.
a huge thing.
Because I also have one entire side of my family that is of color, and my body type is kind of skinny compared. And you know, okay, I've got a black girl booty. I've heard that my whole life.
You do.
I do. I've had a black girl booty since I got a booty. I mean, it's just been there. But I have had women of color come up to me and go, "Where'd you get that ass?" I don't have an ass like that ass. Yeah. So it's really interesting to me, even within our diverse cultures that we have going on in the country, that we have such differing standards of beauty. I have a friend of mine who is a man of color, and he likes them short and thick, and he just, I mean, that's his type. And he'll see a taller, thin woman of color and be like, she's too skinny. She's too skinny. So it's not just white women who do this to themselves.
No,
I think it's
all.
Women in general, depending on what your idea of what your body should look like based on what society is telling you it should look like.
Right.
Standing in front of that mirror and loving, really loving and appreciating those pieces for what they did for you.
Yeah.
For having been able to support you and you know, I think I feel better naked than I do in my clothes, because when I'm wearing clothes, all my little fat pieces get squished. But when I don't have clothes on, it's all kind of smooth. You know?
I walk around the house naked often.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice. We're empty nesters. We don't
my
have to worry
my
about
kids
that,
know to call before they come over, so
Right.
mom's probably naked.
Right. It is comfortable, and it is about accepting and loving every part of you. Absolutely.
When my husband and I first started dating, I was in a really good place about my body. And we were snuggled up doing something, and he like ran his hand down my body. And he ran his hands down all the ripples. And he stopped for a minute and he goes, "You didn't slap my hand away." He goes, "Most women would slap my hand away." I said, "No, because if you like it, I like it."
Right.
I mean,
but
that's
I
the
read
thing.
a research thing not long ago that was talking about, okay, if there are any men out there listening,
Please chime in.
listen to this too, because one of the things that you can do is touch your woman's body.
Yes.
The act of touching in a loving way does more for her comfort and her being able to love every part of her than words.
Because you're loving it too.
Absolutely.
And you're
there's
validating that.
research that backs that up.
As a
Do
massage
it.
therapist, I can tell you.
Yeah.
One of the things that is not spoken about a lot in massage, but is something that one of my instructors told me a long time ago. we as a massage therapist, when we stroke down a body, we are outlining that for that
like
person.
You're defining it.
I'm defining the edges of your body. And I had a moment happen just the other day. I was giving a lady a massage, and she had her hand along her side, and she was touching my elbow, and she goes, "Oh, that's you. I thought that was my thigh." And I'm like, "Sweetie, your legs don't come out that far." And because we get in our heads that we are so much bigger than we really are. And I have had women on my table that are way heavy. Women that, according to popular doctors or whatever, would be considered morbidly obese and are so very comfortable in their bodies. And then I have women on my table that are the ideal.
Yeah.
The ideal. Not 1 ounce of extra skin or or fat or anything on this woman's body. And she rips herself to shreds.
Yeah.
And so it's all about your perception.
Yeah.
It's all about carrying it. I'm telling you what, honey, carry it like you mean it, and they'll believe it.
So I and we'll wrap up here in a minute, but I saw a video series. This woman decided, I'm gonna dress and act like a hot girl until I believe it.
Yeah.
And she did. She changed the way she dressed. She made sure to figure out what looked good on her, how to emphasize the parts of her that she absolutely loved. That doesn't mean that, you know, she hates the other parts, but if there's a feature that
if you've got a great rack, you know.
For me,
yeah.
When my hair has a good curl day, I love my hair.
Right.
And I've had black girls say, "Oh my God, look at that curl."
Yeah.
Which I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool," because I freaking love your hair.
I love that.
But you know, for me, it's eyes. I emphasize my eyes and cleavage, occasionally cleavage, but like, play it up.
You
play
move
up whatever
differently.
feature it is that you enjoy. You move differently.
You move differently.
through the
You
world.
carry
You
yourself.
exude
Yes.
You feel better about yourself. You feel more confident, and you exude this energy. And energy is so huge in like everything that we do, and that also leads into
the manifestation thing that we're going to be
discussion. So try it. See if that makes any kind of difference.
Give us some feedback. Let us know.
I'd love to hear.
Let us know. Let us know if it was hard.
Yeah.
Let us know if it was easy. Let us know if it brought up something for you. Because that definitely, I would be very interested in having conversation with a panel of women about how that felt for them.
Yeah.
You know, because it's going to be a different experience for everyone depending on where you're at with your relationship with your own body.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So
thanks for coming on this impromptu journey with us. This wasn't even scheduled for today.
It really wasn't, but we accidentally started recording, so we're like, hey, we're going to run with it.
We're just roll with it.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.